world where we are constantly trying to navigate how to live, why should we live? But more than anything, we're constantly trying to find ourselves reflected in society. Now, a lot of people have written books, we've watched series, we've heard people talk about things that we can relate with. Today on Bua, we are discussing a book that so many young, old, middle-aged women in South Africa could relate with. The book is titled Unbecoming to Become by the author Ayanda Borotho. Ayanda, welcome to Bua with me, your host.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Wadu. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. Now, before we kickstart this conversation, remember, please send us your videos. Now, a lot of you have read the book. You've engaged on Ayanda's Instagram page, and you've made a lot of positive reflections. You've seen yourself in this book, or you've heard a friend talk about it. So if you have the book, we encourage you to send us a clip to the details on the screen. Send your clip of you reading the book, whether it's you talking also about how you relate with some of the stories. Come on now, do it. So, this is Ayanda. We love the book. See, I'm even excited. I'm trying the energy and everything. We love the book because it is relatable. We love the book because it is us. It's easy to read. But more than anything, I think before we even get into the contents of it, I'd like for you to take us back to your state of even before you wrote the book. A lot of people ask you, okay, what was the motivation? You're already writing statuses. But you know, it is so hard to even write a caption.
Yeah.
Just the caption, we are deleted. You end up putting hearts because you feel like your words are not enough. You feel like you haven't phrased it properly. Who were you at that point where you even started writing the statuses? Why did you trust your voice? Why did you think that, as I'm saying, this is what I'm thinking?
It's not it's such a common question. It's not I don't have a one sentence type response to it. I almost really can't remember who I was, but I know that I wasn't who I was becoming, and also who I ended up being here now, even after writing the book. I know that those were two different people, that I know. But so I didn't grow up thinking I'd ever write a book. That I never grew up thinking I'd ever write a book. That was never in my plans. I'm a storyteller, and I think because by virtue of being a storyteller, I've never limited myself to I'm a storyteller who only tells stories through performance. Being a storyteller for me is vast. You know, I can tell stories in different ways. So when this platform or avenue of telling a story through a book platform came up, or was an idea that God planted in my head, I panicked because I've always believed even then that the book was divine in its nature. And that there was a calling for me to write the book. So there was a call from the public for me to write because of, like you mentioned, the statuses that I would share. But I thought, guys, I'm writing my captions. It's not a book. It's just captions. And that voice was growing, but I also came to understand that voice started changing, and it started becoming a different voice, and it was God's voice. It was the universe speaking to me about now is the time. So where this book found me when I first put words to paper, I was at a place in my life where I was completely lost. I was unhappy. I describe it as a deep sense of sadness. And I didn't understand why I was sad, because from the outside looking in, there was a lot going well for me. You know, if you gauge marriage as an achievement, I was married. If you gauge having children as an achievement, having a family, I had a beautiful family. I had a beautiful career. My entrepreneurship, business things that I was doing were thriving. ordinarily I should have been happy, but I wasn't. There was a deep sense of sadness in me that I couldn't understand. I was resentful, and I just didn't understand. I thought I was depressed. I thought, but I just couldn't understand it. So I'm somebody who's naturally introspective. So when I was going through this phase, I started to introspect I prayed, I meditated, what is going on? Why am I? First, I had to acknowledge that I'm in this way. I'm showing up to the world in this way and to my family in this way, but I didn't understand. So I needed to investigate why I was showing up in the way that I was showing up.
Can I just interject? There's something that just keeps, pressing on me. You say that you're not an author, you're a storyteller. In a world whereby everything is fixed up on Western ways of writing, how to tell the story, and automatically, to be quite honest, if you don't tick a few boxes, you get disqualified or you don't get the title. You don't get the honor of being an author. It's a question, and also me just giving my opinion, rather. If you say you're not an author, automatically when a young person picks up a pen and starts reliving certain things and starts writing, they'll start attributing other titles as opposed to exactly what they are. What does it mean to be an African author? How do African people write? Because we're constantly trying to re-envision Africa. We're trying to re-envision writing. We're trying to re-envision literature. So by you saying you're not an author and at storytelling, obviously say it's handinda, but this sounded like we're sitting with a friend listening to the juice. But do you feel like you're disqualifying yourself or as an author, or it's very intentional in saying this is just a story?
I don't give weight to titles. You can call me an author because yes, by virtue of having written the book. I think what I'm trying to say is I did not grow up thinking I would be an author, that I would write. So yes, I'm an author now because I've written a book. But what I certainly don't do is hang on to the titles because they box me, and I don't like being boxed. If I say to you I'm a storyteller, I'm not limiting myself. But the minute I say I'm an author, then I box myself into the box here being an author, and there's an expectation that comes with that because now people are expecting another book. And in this moment, for me, it was a divine book, and I needed to write this book for this phase and for this generation. But it doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, sengizokhipha in 3 years. And if I don't, that's okay.
It was a moment, it was a revelation.
It was a moment in time that I needed to purposefully live and live out fully, and I did that, and I'm okay with that. But if I'm going to hold on to the titles that people give me and the titles that the world defines us by, then I'm going to box myself, and I'm going to have a very difficult time because there'll be so much pressure on me now having to live or having to try and live this being an author.
So can I ask you this? You talk about titles. So does it matter that you're Black? Does it matter that you're a woman? Does it matter that you're a mom? Does it matter that you're South African? Because I remember that I got to a point where my identity started evolving. At first, and it mattered because I was a president at some point. Next thing, I'm Black. So it means that my enemy automatically has to be. And I was like, God is like, I'm calling you to greater things. And then my gender started mattering, but I'm a woman. I'm a daughter. They became the problem. God's like, you're the solution to that. So that which parts of your identity do you say, I have to own this because it's attached to my destiny, it's attached to my purpose?
Because I am all of that.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that I'm defined by all of that. I am all of that. But I'm not necessarily defined by all of that. So you're asking me, Guti, where do I then draw identity from? I draw identity from being divine feminine because that doesn't limit me. My divine femininity manifests itself in different ways. It manifests itself as a mom. It manifests itself as Eve, the helper, the rescuer for men or for mankind. It manifests itself as woman who's sensual, who's sexy, who's beautiful. It manifests itself as wisdom. That comes with age or gogobe to leadership. Yeah, it manifests itself in so many ways. So for me, what encompasses who I am is divine femininity. I don't So here's the thing. You started off by asking me where I was when I wrote the book.
Yes.
We're already partly answering some of those questions, because where I was I was answering to everything the world said I was, and I wasn't answering to who I thought or wanted to be. And in fact, at the time, I didn't even know who I wanted to be anymore, because so much of me had been lost to mom, had been lost to wife, had been lost to friend, had been lost to the character I was playing on TV, to celebrity, to all these things. I was lost
Right.
in all of that. And that's why often, even when I go to speaking engagements, I try to move away from people reading my bio and my achievements and my accolades, because when I speak and when I connect to people, I connect to people on a human level. It's a personal level. It doesn't matter that, great, I wrote the books, but so what if I can't connect with you? Great, I'm on television. It's great that I'm but it does. All of those things don't matter, don't mean anything if I can't connect with you on a personal level. So that's why I say, for me, the unbecoming to become, if you look at it, unbecoming is unbecoming the world and becoming me, because I was taking off the coats and the layers that defined who I was from a societal aspect, from a world aspect, from a world filter, from a world lens. And I wanted to define for me who I was. And even as you talk about identity, that identity is constantly changing, it's constantly evolving. There is no right or wrong. And there are people who are okay just identifying as being mom, and that's fine. There are people who are okay and are defined by being unkosikazi oqotho, and I just serve my husband. That's
choose that.
absolutely
It's
fine.
a
That is what
choice.
they choose. And so I think for me, this identity, I think for as long as identity is evolving and the becoming is a process and a journey of evolution,
Okay.
right? But with the appreciation of I am here right now in this state, and embracing the who that you are here now. For me, that's the importance. It's the words are just words.
There's something that I've experienced at some point, is that uma yonke insipho iwasha, sometimes uzofaka newashe ngeronke.
Yeah.
Mase kuyaphupha.
Yeah.
So in a world whereby you can be whatever, and I mean anything, some people choose to be oppressive. And at times ngiyakhetha ukuba imatriarchy le ecindezela umakoti, because
Yeah.
manje we define femininity in our own ways. Not even feminism. She's a feminist. Can't you know? It's literally how you choose to see life.
Yeah.
In a world like that, where you can be whatever, choose to be whatever, some people are choosing oppression. They are choosing ukuhlukunyezwa. Athi umuntu, no, ngiyakhetha ukuthandana nomuntu ozongibhanga ohambelala, ngiyafuna, ngicela ningiyekeni. And you're just like, but you hurt. Can we talk about the healing? Let's heal. And it's like, no, phuma endabeni zami. Wena ngoba uyasebenza, wena ngoba unemali. In a world where brokenness has become normalized, how do we create a sense of consciousness that there's a problem?
Two things. I think one is what we're doing now. So we keep having the conversations. We keep having the conversations in our corners, in our homes, in our families, in our circles, wherever we are. We keep having the conversations. But also, most importantly, is we become that which we want to see in the world. We become that which we want to see in the world. I think siphila esikhathini esinzima, because abantu abayona into abathi bayona. Bathi bayinto ethize kodwa bebe beyenye into. And the beautiful thing about life is that there are certain universal laws that you cannot change. Just because you feel a certain way and your identity is evolving doesn't mean that universal laws change. The truth remains the truth, even when people lie. You can lie to yourself, but the truth remains the truth. So, ukuhlukunyezwa nokuhlukumezeka akukaze kwaze kwaba yinto enhle, even uNkulunkulu asidelelanga ukuthi sihlukumezeke. Ukuhlupheka is not something to be glorified. So lelo qiniso remains true, whether when we akuthanda or awukuthandi. So we have to be that which we aspire to see in the world. Kwesinye isikhathi abantu bashintshiswa ukubona bebona abanye abantu. Kwesinye isikhathi abantu bashintshiswa inkulumo. So we have to keep these two things parallel, and ziloku iqhubeka. We must be consistent in them. That we must continue the conversations, but we must be that which we aspire to see in the world. Because awukwazi uqamba amanga uthi uhappy ubuhlukumezekile. Amanga lawo. Ungayiqiniso lakho kodwa kwamanga.
Because once a month
Akuhambelani with universal laws. Inhlupheko nothando nokujabula akuhambelani. Akuhlangani.
something triggers you that this is not normal, this is not right.
And so here's where I think we absolutely have to be aware as people ukuthi umuntu, you cannot force umuntu ukuthi ashintshe into ayiyona in esaphakathi kuleyo nto leyo. Esasebhodweni elishisayo awukwazi ukumforce, but you can continue to talk, and you can continue to be that which you want to see in the world, which you aspire to see and change about the world.
In a world where spirituality is a lot of other things, and ubilo unkosikazi wasebandleni, you know, and like Snama vibe, really. How do you unbecome in a world where spirituality is almost ambiguous? Because I do believe that a lot of people are anchored in some thoughts, in some theory, that, okay, where do I begin?
I think we must heal from the trauma of, I call it abandonment from God. Because the way we view God, certainly this is how I feel, the way we view God is we view God so separate from us. Kanti uphi lo nkulunkulu?
How did my mom pass away?
Ukuphi lo nkulunkulu? Right. So I think for me, the beginning of that journey for me is about the same God. If I can answer that this God is in me and is not separate from me, then it means this God wants what is best for me. So what is it that I want for self? But we must start by not separating God from self. Because manje uNkulunkulu simbuka njengale ndoda phetheni what a sword ngesizulu inkemba, uphethe inkemba laphana nentshebende emhlophe
Uzopanisha, condemn, you've sinned.
Simbona as leyo nto leyo, yebo? And I think if we create a paradigm shift of understanding that God is not separate from who we are. God is not separate from us. And that God would not want for us what would harm us, what is not best for us. Asiqale lapho. What does God want for me? And in that place where I was when I started to write the book, it was a questionnaire. So, and this is a question that's captured in the conversation I was having with God in the beginning when I said, God, is it true that if we are created in your likeness and image, and I'm paraphrasing, would it then be true that you manifest yourself twice as a superior God in men and as an inferior God in women? And it was that question that I had to answer, because God then says to me, find yourself, and there where you find yourself, you will find me also, and you will find your answers. So it was about finding the God self in me. Hence, ngithi kuwena, the worldly titles ngiyawezwa, o ma, o sisi, o author, o ban. But for me, divine femininity is what captures all of it. Because in the head, divine femininity, I can show up in all of these, and I'm not limited. I'm limitless in my God state as a divine feminine being.
When you talk about cancel culture, I see how we're constantly cancelled. And if we're not cancelled in society, we cancel ourselves. And we could call it dethroning. But in reality, how do we navigate in a world where we don't see ourselves?
It's a very deep question. I don't claim to have
Answers.
a true answer for it, and I also don't claim to have the right answer for it. I think for me, it's about carving an identity that you aspire to be,
Okay.
or you aspire to.
Okay.
So maybe angizange ngize ngifane nowatu and angizange ngize ngifunde ey'koleni ey'phambili. But then does it mean ukuthi ukuba wawufunda, because singafunda sonke ey'koleni ey'fana nalezi wena ufunde kuzona watu, kodwa futhi singaphumeleli sonke,
Yeah.
or sonke singabi whatever it is that we aspire to. I think for me it's fully and wholly understanding, even if understand konke, but having an idea of what makes you happy,
Okay.
what gives you peace, and where can you be, or what kind of environment should you be in that would allow you to thrive as a human being. Because makuthiwa ngempela ikhona lento ukuthi mawusufika ezulwini ubhekana no menzi wakho, umenzi wakho akubuza ukuthi wenzeni. If ngempela kuthiwa ikhona leyo nto, I think ngingaphatheka kabi mangase ngibuza ukuthi ukwenzile u-A B C D, ngithi mina yebo ngikwenzile, but mayisebuza ukuthi ubujabulile, were you happy? Were you happy? Were you okay? Yeah, were you okay? Right. Ngithi mina no. Then it means nothing to me. Life would be meaningless for me. And I think that's partly the problem with today's society, which we attribute so much value to everything that is external and outside of us. So it's the schools that the Wadus went to, it's the cars that they're now driving, it's the husbands they're married to, it's the titles they now hold. It's always outside of us and not in us. And what is outside of us, we have very little control over, if any. And everything that is inside of us, we have full control over. And those are the things we don't want to work on. The
True.
internal.
That's the harder portion.
That's the harder. But that's the fulfilling part.
It is.
That's the fulfilling part. But the world has created this narrative and the lie that everything that is joy, that is success, that is beautiful is outside of you.
The brand.
It is, yeah, it's about what everybody else thinks. And like, ngihlala ema-farm. Ngisegoli ngihlala ema-farm. I hate coming to the north. I was telling Uvuman, I'm not a north person. When I come here, I come once a week, sometimes once in three weeks. And I come here for meetings. I work from home. It was a deliberate, conscious decision that I don't like the city life. So we bought a plot and we built our dream home, and we, sifuna ukufuya manje,
Yes.
But that's me. Now, whether uwatu uhamba nge-Louis Vuitton esentini, uwatu lo, it's fine, akakwenze, but angifuni kungidictatele mina ukuthi mina ngubani.
You've made it when you have A, B, and C. And you're qualified to speak to us. Because
yes,
now
you live wherever you know. That's why abantu bekuma-reality shows beqamba amanga banezindlu bengenazo. Bayiqashe noma bahamba oshuthele endlini zabantu. Because yiko lokho ukuthi how the world measures success is exactly what is depressing people.
Sure.
Because we're trying to keep up with a narrative of success that firstly doesn't exist. What does it mean if it's all njengoba igama olisebenzisile, if ukugqilaza? how
But does money draw money? Because there's a series that I've been watching. I think it's called Annie or something like that. This girl's coming from a disadvantaged
I heard
background.
about it. I started watching it, and then I started watching it.
But this is what I love. Throughout the story, she's like, I never lied to anyone. I showed up. I showed up as the version of myself that I saw myself as. But how do you differentiate between remember, also sponsors get given to people who look like they have the lifestyle. How do we discuss that? Showing up and actually faking it.
Yeah, or fake it till you make it.
Or fake it till you make it. Kahle kahle.
Angaz. Angaz because I've never been that. I don't know how to be that. And I can't answer for those people. Angaz, I really don't know. But I'm also of the view that we're very wrong when we say brands won't show up if you're not showing up a certain way.
Okay.
I think brands are looking for authenticity. A lot of brands are looking for authenticity. People who are true to themselves and are true to, and I'm a testament of that.
Sure.
I don't succumb to pressure to be anything that I'm not. Angilgqoka iCrocs mawungekho necessary. iCrocs ngikhume stage. Ngizongena ngalo bese ngiyachaza ngithi bafethi iCrocs ayinto yami. Ngicela nje ukukhumula mina ngiqoqile All Star. Yona into yami nizongixolela. Kwesinye isikhathi ngiyifela nje iqoqele All Star. I tend to disagree. I think that your authenticity, your truth will draw light to you, will automatically draw light to you because that is the true essence of your being. And I've seen a lot of brands who have partnered with people who are authentic. I think it's about choosing ukuthi what do you want to represent? Okay. Is that the life that is that the image and the life and the brand that you want to create for yourself and what you want to represent? I know that I could never be that, which is why you'd never see me at the Summers, SAFTAs, all
this
these grand shows.
This is through a consciousness awards. When you started becoming you. Or no, this has always been you with Angen's Leon.
No, and it's not what Angen's Leon ngendlela embi. It's just nginengane. Ngikhokha school fees. Angeke ngize ngiqamba amanga ngalokho. Kuyindleko ukukhokha school fees.
Yeah.
Njoba sakhile nje kuyindleko ukwakha. Impilo iyindleko.
Yeah.
Angeke ke mina ngumama onengane ezintathu. Nengane engiyisupportayo outside of my own children, my biological children. Nengane engiyisupportayo, nieces and nephews. Children that are my children.
Yes.
I can't afford designer dress every week, and that's just a fact.
Okay.
So ngiyifakele leyo pressure. I can't afford it. It's not who I am. It's not phezu kwalokho abantu bayangisinda. Angikwazi ukuba in an environment where there's noise for a long time and there are a lot of people. I can do that for an hour. And an hour might be two, and then I need to retreat. And that's just me. And I have stayed true to who Ayanda is. Brands know that they won't invite me to a polo.
Okay.
Right? But they know that if we needed Ayanda to speak on GBV and we needed a credible voice around a certain issue, we can approach her. And I'm happy doing that.
It finds you in your purpose.
Yeah, I'm happy doing that. I'm really happy doing that. But also, ukhuluma ngeyingane eselokishini. This is why I think we also have to understand that we must fulfill our own purpose for others to be able to reach and fulfill theirs. So kunabantu abangeke baze bayifeze idestiny yabo if uwathu ehlulekile kweyakhe. There are people whose purpose and destiny relies on you, is attached to you. Why am I saying this? Because what you guys are doing here is your own thing. This is you taking the bull by the horns and saying, even if Mzansi has not opened the platform, even if SABC has not opened and given us that platform, but we can do this, and we're going to use whatever resources we have to do this. And this is why I'm here, because I also understand the power of collaboration, right? And what that does for others, for all of us, right? So this is where we now, as Indlensundu, have to understand ukuthi in this space, because sikhuluma nge-media manje ngiyacabanga
Yes,
ngoba sikhuluma
sila.
yeah, in this space to reset the status quo, we have to disrupt the status quo. And this is disruption, because this is not the norm. You haven't gone the normal route. This is disruption. To reset the status quo, we have to disrupt the norm. And in disrupting the norm, we create a parallel system and a parallel world with our own rules. Because the problem with what currently exists is that we have to play by everybody's rules. But with the system that we're creating for ourselves, we're playing by our rules. So, knowing the challenges as we do, knowing the challenges as the people who are executive producing the show, you go into this business with the understanding that there's a limit to accessibility because certain people don't show up in a certain way, so doors are not opened for them. Because you have that understanding, because that was once you.
We operate from a place of
you
pain.
operate from a place of I'm paying it forward.
Okay.
Right. So this is why this is important, that we have to disrupt the status quo. We have to disrupt it and not play the game, but create our own game. And this is creating a new game.
Okay, I want to ask 2 questions, but let's just get into this one because we're here. How do you differentiate? You're speaking about you have people that you support, and khona izinto sesithi black tags, but has that been a title given to us? Because in reality, some people were disappointed when ukhulele because kuwena they saw you as an investment. How do we differentiate between black tags and ukunikela back home?
I think we can't underestimate what apartheid did to our people and our families. I think we can't downplay it. And we also can't downplay the remnants of that and the after effects of that. That a lot of how our families are operating are the remnants and a consequence of what apartheid did to our people, dividing us, separating us, and us constantly trying to find a healthy way of coexisting or functioning when actually, bilizwa, right? So, and this is why I think the conversations are always important. Yazi kunesisho sesiZulu sithi yonke into yoniwa ngolimi futhi lingiswa ngolimi. And I think it's such a powerful saying. Because angikwazi ukuqagela ukuthi yini oyicabangayo noma yini esenhlizweni yakho. I can't guess those things. I can only get to understand you once you and I have had a conversation and we've come to a place of I understand where you're coming from and you understand where I'm coming from.
You must be willing also to understand.
Must be willing to understand.
Yeah.
If those conversations are not happening, then we have a problem. We're going to find ourselves in this perpetual cycle of dysfunction because we're not talking healthily.
Very true.
Right? So, and I think these are conversations that are important that were meant to be happening around the fire, around the dinner table, ekhaya, cishe TV, kuyasixoxa nje ukuthi, hey, umalume usibanibani kambe washonaphi? Hey, umalume usibanibani uyazi ukuthi amabhunu ngalesikhathi kuriliswa ama-political prisoners azange zabuye, and umalume yazi uyena wayenza ukuthi ekhaya, and as a result njoba umalume engasekho sekuchaza ukuthi ingakho-ke nibona umfokabhuti kuyena manje ngoba wathatha indawo yabo. Those are important conversations, understanding ukuthi silana as a family. Why are we here as a family? Why are we here as a family?
Do we need men though in family? Because in families, yabona manje ukhuluma ngobhuti, ukhuluma
mina ngiyabadinga ngazi ngani ma-feminists, mina ngiyabadinga amadoda.
In a world where so many houses are female headed, I don't want us to live in survival mode. Singabe sabona ukuthi kahle kahle umfana indawo yakhe sikubo. For example, ngibuka uNkosi, ngingamdabukela mina uNkosi kwi story. I'm like, wazi ukuthi istayela, ibrandi, this is what he thought manhood was. And we're living in a world where obviously abantu besilisa, they think that uma nganamali ubudoda bamabukho. how do men see themselves in a world? Because manje, we're raising men. We live with abantu besilisa. We call them toxic or we disregard them if they don't have anything. So njoba uyakwazi ukuba inhloko ungenamali in today's day and age. Yes, you're saying let's have the conversation. Respect must be the fundamentals. But I think that a lot of men are struggling with mental health because their manhood is not, they're not becoming me. Automatically now.
Well, their manhood is not their manhood has been defined by society and it has not been defined by what we know. So I guess we'll move back to kuyini ukuba indoda.
Okay.
I don't know whether amadoda azokuvumela yini ukuthi apply because we live in a world where you know, the narrative is money is success is money. So I don't know if we'd be able to shift that paradigm here now, but I think it's important that even if that's the current narrative, we understand what the real narrative was.
Okay.
Indoda, makuthiwa indoda, ubuhle bendoda iy'nkomo zakhe, kwakuchaza ukuthini, you know? And I love quoting this one, ubuhle bendoda iy'nkomo zakhe, because it has nothing to do with, and this is something that Mbuso Khoza taught me, I didn't know. It had nothing to do with imali. It had nothing to do with his iy'nkomo zokulobola, because now we think, oh, iy'nkomo walobola, oh, ubuhle bendoda iy'nkomo zakhe, oh, unkosikazi wakhe. No. It had nothing to do with that, but rather at a certain time when a young man would become of age and he'd be given a cow to look after, and as iy'nkomo zakhe zilokhu zanda, if he looked after the first cow well, then he'd be given other cows to look after. And iy'nkomo zakhe mazilokhu bemnika zanda, mina nguwesimame ngibuka ukuthi how uney'nkomo, which means he's responsible. Ubuhle bendoda is his responsibility, and how those he is seen to be responsible for thrive in his care, thrive in his, is he able to create a conducive environment for those that he is responsible for to thrive. Ingakho mangabe wawuhlulwa inkomo yodwa wawunganikwa ezinye inkomo, and if you could not take care of the cows, it meant you could not take care of the family. How can you have a family if uhlulwa inkomo?
Yes.
Yabo? So asibuyele lapho ekutheni ubuhle bendoda nobuhle bababa ukuthi mina ngiyindodakazi, mina ngumama, reach my fullest potential. This is where the world has twisted it, where now men feel threatened by my light, they feel threatened by my power, and he then wants to dim my light, not understanding ukuthi if I'm not, it's a reflection on him. If I'm not okay, if his children are not okay, he's a failure. If your children have
family's pride, not because they own you, but it's your success.
This ubuhle bendoda busemndenini bakhe. It has nothing to do with imali. Ngangizwa kuthiwa masiya ezulwini uNkulunkulu indoda uyoyibuza ukuthi umkakho unjani umkakho, ziphi ingane zakho, uphi umkakho, izoqala lapha iconversation. Ngiyangizwe lapha, ngiyangizwa kusho njalo. So ukhuluma ukuthi siyawadinga amadoda, of course we do, and this is why sometimes when people label me as somebody who's maybe bashes amadoda, but I bash toxicity in all fronts, on all fronts, whether it's female femininity or because even matriarchy in itself can be toxic, right?
True.
So I bash toxicity in all spheres. I can only speak from a place of being female because I'm female, so I can only speak from a place of truth. Amadoda siyawadinga, siyawafuna, siyawathanda, asiwafuni ukuthi asishaye, asiwafuni ukuthi asihlukumeze. Sifuna amadoda aqotho azoba obaba. Mina personally angigxilile ekutheni unemali noma unayo imali. Angigxilile lapho. Imali sayidinga, and that's a fact. So
yes.
Nama ngifuna ukuthi ube potato couch yabo ozohlala ubheke mina, but the let me tell you this, people don't know this, and because I don't talk about this, I don't talk about my personal life. My husband is a doctor by profession. He left medicine and went into entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship has its own issues and challenges, right? But part of why he left the profession is because he couldn't spend time with his family, didn't see his family. And My children, 2 years ago, we made the decision to homeschool the children. My children are homeschooled, bafundiswa ubaba wabo. And we have created a life that is comfortable enough for us to be able to give time and attention to the things that we want to give time and attention for. Like this morning, I was dropping off some guys at the besebenza endlini, and this guy saying, "Oh, usebenzela ngala uzosdropa khona." And ngicela ukusho ukuthi no, ngisebenza endlini, ngisebenza mangithanda mangathandi, you know. We've created, we're not super rich. We might not even be rich by the world standard, but we are happy.
You redefined how family should
We
be.
redefined what family should be for us. We redefined what was important for us and for our family. The fact that my boys can, in fact, let me start it here. Over the last couple of months, I've been thinking, Guti, this thing, when I hear psychologists talking about some of the things that are important for human and child development, and one of the big things that's always on that list is safety, a sense of feeling safe as a child. And I didn't understand what that was. And then I remembered, ukuthi ngisakhula, uma mangabe ethat uma would take her leave go May, because that's her birthday month. So all throughout the year she worked, and then birthday month May she would be home. And they were my most favorite times of the year that mom was home. And as I was reflecting on why that gave me why that made me feel the way that I felt. And I realized that it made me feel the way that I felt because mangibuyele ekhaya ngivula umnyango, there was a lightness in the air, but also there was a lightness and a warmth that felt safe because Uma was home.
It's taken care of.
Yeah,
Safety is not just security, but it's sorted.
There was a safety that came with Uma just being home. There was it's a feeling I can't describe. It's that thing, understanding ukuthi ingane, they really, when they look at us, think we're giants.
True.
Right? They see us. The lens of ingane is that humans or adults are giants, and we're really ingane ziyasaba, and we're seldom sensitive to that thing. Ingane mazisibuka ziyasaba. The world is a scary place for children. It really is a scary place for children, but we take it for granted because we're where we are now. But we take for granted where we come from, which is where my children are now, where the world is such a scary place. Adults are giants, buildings are huge, and I'm just this little person, right? And what we've been able to create for ourselves, my husband and I, and for our family, is a safe space for our children, and a space where I can filter the noise, we can filter the noise and what they consume.
You talk about the structure of your home. Abanye abantu right now who are probably watching this, but they're cohabitating, bakipitile, and automatically ngaphandle ihome yabo ibukeka kabi, or they get disregarded. This is not a legitimate home. The legitimacy of a family and a home is also attached to ilobola process. It's attached to the wedding process, not just the signing, but the families, the coming together of families. Some families are even toxic. You don't even want them to come together. How do we re-envision a family structure outside of the oppressive system of amalobolo or 50 or 100 or 500,000 in a poor society?
Let me start by saying, this is my story. It's my truth. There are a lot of people who can relate with almost all the chapters. Some all the chapters, almost all the chapters. Some not all the chapters. Some 1 or 2 chapters. We are all on different journeys. We have different dynamics that speak to what our journeys look like. Akuzukufana.
Okay.
And I don't have a universal answer for everyone. Because we're all on different journeys. Here's the question that I ask myself. when I'm having to answer tough questions like, so what do I do? Like, this is the question I'm teaching my daughter to ask herself. What is the impact on me?
Okay.
And the impact, because for every action there's a reaction, so the reaction, the repercussions, the consequences, whatever that impact or whoever that impacts, apart from me, the impact on me will have impact on those around me.
Okay.
What does that impact look like? And you start from there.
Okay.
You gauge, you weigh, what is the impact on me, and what is the impact on those around me and those I love, and what does that impact look like? What does this do for me? Indaba yelobola, by the way, I exclude abantu besifazane kuphela, or ayihlabi endabeni yabantu besifazane kuphela. But there are a lot of men who now can't pursue women that they love and genuinely want to be with because they can't afford to, because we've now misrepresented what ilobola is. So I suppose my challenge to society is to say, let's not filter through the wound. Let's not filter life through the wound. Asibe logical, practical, honest, and sincere, and not filter life through the wound. Mangishada mina. Ziningi izinto engazange ngizenze ngohlelo that was expected of me, and what society expected of me. My husband and I were very adamant that kuzolotsholwa, kuzoshadwa eThekwini, umshado omhlophe. Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have done lo mshado because we're
It
evolving.
was a church thing, though.
And then sizo emasero ngiyongeniswa.
Okay.
Okay. We were very clear with that's what we wanted to do. There were other bits of things, umabo, but
So you did umabo, no members? No.
Zazikhona izinto babeyiphoqa ukuthi zenzeke. Ngingenayo imali zokuzenza at the scale that they wanted me to do them. And I'm trying to say to them, no, but see, you can't enforce this on this man who's going to marry me.
And start a life with me.
Sengumuzi, kusazoba ney'ngane lana, kufanele siqale impilo. Asisebenzise ilogic ke manje. Asibe practically, and then let's do them in the spirit of sincerity and being genuine to say, yini sifuna ukuyibona lana? Sifuna ukubona imicimbi noma sifuna ukubona iy'ngane zihlangene?
Noma ufuna ukuvunywa emphakathini.
Yes, sifuna yini esifuna ukuyenza?
Wow.
And then I and by the way, this wasn't my mom. This was other family members. Yabo. And I had the conversation with my mom because my dad is late. My father passed away when I was 11. And I asked my mom, ma, because sengiworried ngoba lezi zinto futhi ziqhamuka kakhulu kuleli side la kababa. Boso ngiyaphi ma, if ubaba ubekhona ngoba manje ubaba wangishiya mina mhlambe ngisamncane ngimazi kodwa ngingamazi kahle. What would be his viewpoint on this matter? What would my father say? And my mother said, your father would have asked you, what do you want to do? And you would have told him. If there was anything else yena beyifisa, ubengathola indlela yokukumitha halfway, or kodwa ubaba wakho wayengekakuphoqe ukuthi wenze into okwazi ukuyenza, number 1, noma ongafuni ukuyenza, number 2. Ubaba wakho would have asked you, what do you want to do? And your father would have allowed you to do what you want to do. And that gave me peace.
Okay.
And I was able to proceed with whatever plan my husband and I had, my boyfriend then, fiancé or whatever, before we got married. We were able to proceed with the peace of knowing ukuthi ubaba wayengeke aze angiphoqe ukuthi ngenze into engangakwazi ukuyenza noma engafisa ukuyenza. Angazi ukuthi sifike kanjani la. But
Love it.
ngizama ukubuyela ekutheni izinto masizenza. I think we complicate life.
Tina.
Yeah,
remember, this is your only life.
We complicate life. Yeah. Complicate life. Life is simple, guys. No matter my interviews, we want to like say grand and philosophical. Life is very simple. And that's why sometimes when I simplify my answers, people don't understand because they want me to be grand and philosophical. And I'm saying no. Lento idinga logic, nokuba practical, nokuba neqiniso.
Uhappy yini, unayo ipeace, uphilela ba. Mawusaphilela abantu. Okay. I-choice yakho naleyo ungakhohlwa ukuthi ukhethile, by the way.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we forget how many times we actually make choices. We feel like we're forced into situations, but I constantly see you fighting. And that's a choice. But my question would then be, do you feel like you had a choice or fighting was all you knew? Emsebenzini, dudu guys, ndaba zodudu.
The tutu syndrome.
Oh my gosh. And we experience so many people who say mean things. And so people are experiencing abuse in the workplace. People are experiencing abuse everywhere. But some are just saying, you know what? I choose my peace. You know that you're not choosing peace, but you're choosing to keep quiet.
Unfortunately, I think the narrative for women has always been that we are in survival mode. Hence, I like addressing the issue here, strength versus power. That we show up in strength and not power because we're forced to be strong when that's not necessarily our forte. We're not meant to be strong. We're just meant to be loved and then to show up in our full potential, right? But we're constantly showing up in strength because we're fighting and are trying to survive. We're constantly trying to survive every day. And I think what will change that narrative for us as women is, first of all, not seeing each other as threats. Because we don't see each other as allies. We see each other as threats. But that's a societal conditioning. And a societal conditioning, straight in chapter 3, that says, ngifundiswe ukuthi njengengane yentombazane, I'm socialized because even ukufundiswa khona is not ukufundiswa like uhlaliswa phansi ingxoxo, it's what you hear, it's what you see, it's what you. So first of all ngifike emhlabeni as a girl child and I not sure what to attach my worth to or my value to, because when I see power and when I see value and I see worth, I see it in men. Okay, that narrative is changing. So I'm talking about the narrative of the generation that we're born into. When I see power and worth and value, I see it in men. So I already am ngilahlekile because I don't know what my value or worth is apart from that which is attached to a man, and that man is usually my father. Right? Ngikhule ngaphansi kwesandla sika baba noma, even though esikhathini esiningi ubaba bese kuba uma bese kuba yingane. Okay, so I already have a psychological power narrative in my mind that says ubaba uma ithini. Okay, and if mina ngingane yentombazane, mina eyami level ye power ne worth iyolingana nekama engaphansi kwekababa. If ngingane yomfana eyami level ye worth ne power iyolingana nekababa engaphezulu kwekama nodadewethu. Ngikhule ngazi ukuthi or socialize into understanding that my value, my worth is attached to umuntu wesilisa oseduze kwami. Ayikho ingane edeleleka njengengane yentombazane engenawo ubaba elokishini. I know that was my experience.
I read that.
Mungenawo nje ubaba, mungenabo obhuti.
Awuna protection.
Ayikho ingane edeleleka njengengane engenawo ubaba, engenawo ubhuti elokishini. Nomuzi ongenaso isithunzi njengomuzi ongenawo ubaba. Okay.
But by the way, umuzi mawunganaso isithunzi, does it mean that usuyasheleka isinomi kanjani?
Konke lokho, noma wakho uyasheleka, konke kusheleka uma, kusheleka ubaba, kusheleka yeah, bafike bazongqonqoza ewindini, konke lokho. My mother went through all of that. Amadoda aseroundini azongqonqoza la ewindini ebusuku, you're just like
bamemeza izinto inappropriate phambi kwengane, umuntu ashela ingane ukhona umama.
Yeah, konke. You know, uzoshela isinomi kanjani because well uzongceba kuba, you know, babafowenu bancane kunami or siyalingana nabangibasabi, or but okusalayo nayo ubaba wena uzohamba uyomtshela. So ayikho ingane intombazane ideleka njengengane engenayo ubaba.
Yeah.
Okay, udlule lapho iworth nokuzazi emphakathini nokuba umuntu emphakathini is attached to umuntu wesilisa.
True.
Bose ungena esitagini sokujola. In between there's a whole host of things about how you dress that we don't hear for the boys, you know, about how you must take care of everyone. Is it I wash you, the domestication issues that you were alluding to, all of that. In between there's all of that, but I'm just highlighting the big milestones. Then ufika stage in isigabeni sokujola. Uma ufika esigabeni sokujola, what happens? I-division phakathi kwethu sabantu besifazane iqala lapho ngoba siyafundisa ukuthi kune straight urechte main chick kuno side chick umakhwapheni owazanayo ne straight
Kodwa uzwana nabangani?
ngisho as in bayazana yabo u-straight uyazi ukuthi ukhona wamukela ukuthi mhlambe ukhona yabo izinto esibuye sixabanele la endlini ukuthi ukhona yabo ngoba phela uyaba i-straight noma ushadile by the way phela South Africa la kunzima uba straight noma ushadile so then kube no side chick makhwapheni o understandayo who is trying to climb up to a status as a main chick trying to outdo main chick and then ke kuba no ushintshi ke uhlweza ke laba oyakubona mangabe ubhampile i-straight sisekhaya emafarm main chick uya groove ukudinelwe bose ubhampela ushintshi. Those are categories that we grew up understanding elokishini in life generally. Those are categories that we grew up understanding. So already the power dynamic is introduced and socialized into us and understanding what as women as fun. What as a fun? What as women as fun? Emehlweni endoda as fun. And right now all of us
besifana siphuma endlini kodwa la emgwaqweni ngenxa
asafani and sonke la sisilwela uguy
number 1 position
number 1 position this is where the division, the socialization of division and seeing each other as threats rather than as allies is a narrative that is embedded in us as women, because this is a narrative that is embedded at that stage. Sisabancane sikhule nayo. Mase sikhulile in corporate spaces we call it the pull head down syndrome. We call it mean girls. We call it it's part of our socialization. That's why it's so hard to get rid of. It's so hard to get rid of. And unfortunately, it is where we are going to fail the most, because amadoda into I understand is the power of collaboration. We don't.
Bazwana bengazani, but they choose. You walk into the room knowing that we're here to get along.
In corporate spaces, there is what we call farming, corporate farming. Men plant each other in different positions, in positions of authority, where they can channel business and monies into
finance,
to circle here. We are yet to get to that stage as women. I look at Africa and I look at leadership, and I mean, I once posed this very uncomfortable question at a GBV conference I was facilitating, and there were a lot of women in leadership in political structures. And I posed the question here, how is it that in the 20 however many years of our democratic journey as a South Africa, in fact, in the years where as Africa, so many of our countries are not democratic, we're not under colonization. How is it that in a continent where 54 countries in Africa, I think it's 54 countries, we have only seen, as of I think last year, the recent female president of, don't remember her name, but we've only seen 7 female presidents in Africa. And in South Africa, to talk about a female leadership is
still needs the solidarity of men.
Yeah.
Kusayinto nje, isaxoxa
No,
amadoda.
sizovunyelwa amadoda.
Ding permission.
Yeah, sisazovunyelwa amadoda thina ukuthi siphathe noma sibuse. Into engeke nje ziyenzeke. Isinom kanje. Yet we the population of women in Africa is majority, over 50%. The majority of women in South Africa, it's just over, it's about 52%. So how does that work? Because phela amadoda awahamba nani ukuya kwi-voting land, kwi-booth yokuvota. Isebenza kanjani lento yenu le ukuthi
Manikhankasa yini le nisho manje mase meetingini kumuntu wesifazane uzizwa njani ngempela uyovotela umuntu wesilisa?
There are things that just don't make sense, and until we get to that place where we've taken off, collaboration and unity is still far from us, and until we get to that place as women, there's a lot of.
How do we get there? This is just something that's been coming up automatic in my generation now. People, by the way, I'm a 90s baby, just so that you guys know. In our generation, it's time acceptable where people are now aspiring for it. You even talk about how so accept ukuthi empilweni nje abantu besebahlule ukuthi baso rather legitimize lento lena. I know that it's a very
besifazane bona abahluleke nokuthi
anganti abantu wena uhlukusha ukuthi awuyiphethe kahle umuntu wesilisa ingoba nje imizwa
ukuthi nje abantu besifazane bayakwazi ukufihla. Abantu besifazane bayakwazi ukufihla. It's not ukuthi
so is accepting isithembu our way of accepting defeat, or is it collaboration?
Collaboration over.
Okay, what's that?
No guy, no man, no girl.
As women, it's legitimate, man. So legitimate, no matter collaborate high or what. So sasa kuze singalokho sibanga amandla. So babizo unkosikazi manje.
What's the vision? What's the vision?
Why are you getting into that union?
What's the vision? That's why ngithi when I'm faced with difficult decisions, I have to ask myself, what is the impact on me? And that impact on me, I can only draw from where I know I'm going and what is my vision, right?
Okay.
Where I know I'm going. What is the impact on those around me? That I can only draw from when I know, okay, mini vision yami ukuthi. So what is the angikwazi ukuphila ngumuntu ngiphila nje ngibe engathi ngiphile emoyeni, like one day is kuyafana na whatever decisions I make, they don't impact on tomorrow, and they don't. We can't be living in a society like that. So what is the vision? What is the impact? Sikwenzelani? I was asked this question 2 weeks ago on another interview, and then they always like pulling this polygamy thing or bringing it up because I once spoke out, and I don't like speaking about it because I think I've said what I need to say about it, and people choose to live their lives that they want, the way that they want to live. I can't tell them, but I keep going back to the thing ethi iqiniso alishintshi ngoba nina senivumele ukuthi amanga sizohambelana namanga. Iqiniso hlezi liqiniso. Iqiniso alishintshi ngoba nina senivumele ukuthi iqiniso lithi sithembe sika mamkhulu.
It's her decision.
It's not even her decision, it's her power.
Okay.
So decision, right now, that emanates from that power. It's her power. Isithembu esikamamkhulu. Isithembu esikama. Isithembu somuntu wesifazane. Iqiniso thina esilaziyo ilelo esilitshelwe wokhokho bethu iqiniso abadlulisele thina ukuthi isithembu esikamama esona somuntu wesilisa. So asizukuthi ke ngoba nawo umhlaba usudonsana ngekhala ngalesi sithembu lesi sine singasazi bese sisiqiniso selishintshe. Iqiniso sithi so lokho abakwenzayo asazi noma kuyisithembu noma kuyini asikwazi because isithembu akusona lesi. Yeah,
but people are redefining. Angani manje, in the beginning we spoke about how should we redefine our existence. If it wasn't working ikdala, let's redefine it in a way that's working. So manje list ngiyathola ini, what do you call it, the rights when husband passes away, you get an estate, all of those things. People are looking at their security. So like you said, the seed ukuthi land ngingenelani kuyona. So yasho ukuthi abanye is because of financial security, but I see a lot of people re-envisioning how they live, and it's part of their own defiance. I'm constantly drawn into how people are redefining even culture. And it's got this, but
it's interesting because polyandry existed endulo. Polyandry ayikhona amakhosikazi ayenamadoda are more than one. Kodwa leyo we are unable to. That is not one that we want to evolve. Sibone in modernity as well. For some reason, that one is problem. So it's interesting for me how lezi zinto si cater for the benefit of a few and whatever privileges they draw from that, or like this is why I keep asking what is the broader vision? Where is this taking us? And it's not to say that I advocate for polyandry, by the way, because I've openly said I wouldn't even be able to engage on polyandry because I understand ukuthi sizosenzelani as isizwe kusenzelani. What does it do? As isizwe kusenzelani ukuthi wena and it's not to say I'm against polygamy. People must live their lives the way that they want to. Who am I to decide for you? I can't choose for you. That's fine. And there are a lot of polygamous setups that have worked for other people, and there are many polygamous setups that have not worked for other people. Collectively, because here's the other thing as abantu abamnyama that we've become so detached from, is that our strength is in our collective. Our power is in our collective.
A collective identity?
A collective identity and a collective narrative and a collective vision. So, because isilungu sathi kuthina uwena nomndeni wakho. Sengibuyela nuclear family uwena nomndeni wakho. High walls, ma-suburbs, akekho ungashaya uzufe wena. Yes. Uphuza amanzi ungenakho ukudla endlini. Kukhona ukudla ka next door. Impilo thina singayazi abantu abamnyama. Esingayi-understand as abantu abamnyama because sikhuliswa ngathi kanjalo. Thina sazi ukuthi we are a community and our strength is in the community. So mase sisukele kulezi zinto siyaqala sibona inkinga. Lezi inkinga sizibonayo manje because there's no sense of community. We've actually taken away the social engagement and that social intimacy, and we've reduced that, and we've increased this social media, which is not people, which is not real. So when I ask the question, what is the vision? Ngoba it doesn't matter if your vision is to have 20 kids, that's fine, but at the end of the day usawedwa as ubaba. Yiziphi ingane kufanele zikudivide ka20 zingakhethanga zona ukuthi sifuna ubaba ezizomdivide ka20. So hence I ask, what is the impact of my decision on those I say I love, on those around me? Apart from myself, what is the impact linked to my vision? But what is the impact on those I say I love? Okay. We have to ask those questions. The problem yet as a society is we don't introspect. We're socialized to mangabe sinenkinga nama challenges. When things get tough or when we're asked tough questions, we get angry and then we just live with the anger, and then we live with the anger, and then we're angry for life, but we don't solve anything. We're not taught to process our decision making. It's a huge problem. It's something that ingane should be taught at junior high. It should be classy.
Process your emotions.
How to process your emotions,
your
so
thoughts.
that you make better decisions for yourself. Awukwazi ukuvuka nje nomane. Like, life must just happen.
You just move. We ask you to school and you don't even know why you're schooling. You don't even know why you're friends with certain people.
I just wanted to finish that thought.
It's an amazing thought. And I think that it takes us back into why should we live and how should we live. Firstly, a lot of takeaways. I'm going to summarize it. It would be just, disrespect. Summarizing a lot of thoughts here. But because this is about a book, we can have a lot of conversations based on just things that are happening in society. I feel like we talk about a lot of red tapes in the industry of just book writing. One of the previous authors, Laud, that we've interviewed, he says that the manner in which he wrote was disregarded by a lot of formal bookshops where he didn't use capital letters, and it's like, why do you write like that? But he was defying the current narrative of what an author looks like, what an author writes like. For you as a woman, because it's an identity that you've chosen to embody. So now you're a woman, now you're Black, and you're writing about your lived experiences. You're a storyteller, which is important for us not to redefine you. For us, it's no, but you need to be an author. It's for my own liberation. So when you're an author, I can be an author. So
Yeah.
with all that said, question, how has it been like being a writer in South Africa? How have bookshops received you beyond just umuntu losekhaya, the actual people that you were writing for? Because we get the book, young women get it, oh mama get it, people who are wounded and at home are like, actually I could relate with this chapter. But when it comes to the formalization, the monetization of this craft, because when you're in the arts, a lot of people in the arts are suffering and they're failing abanye to monetize their gifts. So you go and be a public speaker, but you're not getting the money. For people expect you to volunteer because you're just speaking. People don't see the value of your thoughts, the amount of reading you do, the amount of, because it's not just you writing your thoughts, you research, because these are sensitive matters. So how have you experienced monetizing this craft within the arts? How have you experienced accessing major distributors within South Africa so that if someone else is thinking about writing a book, because we should, they get to know how to do Ayanda, someone who was on, on TV, someone who has a real story, someone who's just a woman, really. How did you experience it in South Africa in 2019?
It was a confusing time for me because, first of all, I didn't quite understand why I was getting the reception that I initially got from big book retailers, right? There is this notion that, oh, because she's on TV, right? Yeah,
Should
she
be
thinks
easy.
like, no. So people think it should be easy, but then there are people on the other side of the gate who are like, "Ugh, like, who said she's an author? Who said she can write?
Ooh.
You know?" So there was that,
Sure.
but then there was also the red tape and the oppression that comes with, this is your intellectual property, your gift that is not serving you. Because I don't know if you know how the writing or the book industry works or the publishing industry work, but as a self-published author, I get to, I'm very involved in making sure that this book comes out like this, right? So it's
The
like, because I'm
texture
self-published, so I did my own shoots. I wrote it. It was edited. I paid for all of that. But then the big issue is distribution, because I can have this gold mine, and it can sit here, and nobody will have access to it, because the platforms won't allow you, because the platforms don't think you're worthy. And that's where the bulk of the issues are and the challenges are, is in the distribution.
So they don't care if
There's
people
a-
want the book, because people would go to a bookshop but they can't find the book.
So I don't know if you know, but at some point we started a campaign called, it wasn't a campaign, but we basically told people to go and demand the book. So abantu basebengena
Njalo, ukuze-
ey'tolo, no, but like bahlanye, like go and hlanye.
How did I miss that?
Yeah, like it was a big thing. So people would go to shops, and because
Wow.
we told them what the narrative was, we told them what they were trying to do. There were bookshops that were not displaying my book. They were keeping my book in
Behind.
shelves, like ekhabetheni. So and there were also other bookshops who said, when they were asked why they were keeping the book in that, they said it was one of the most stolen books. Like Abantu Mabengena, it was one of those books when it first came out. So like Abantu Babeyintshontsha kakhulu. So it was one of those books that they put aside.
Yes.
So there was also that explanation. But I did experience a lot of, I'll call it resistance. It's not an embracing type of culture in this space where, you're a new author, you're an upcoming author, and we see that your book has received great reviews and great, like, we must support you. It got the support that it got eventually because I fought. I fought, and I fought because I didn't want them to recognize the book because of who I was. I wanted the book to be recognized because of what it was doing.
The contents.
And the people had spoken, and I said, you're not going to deny the people who have found merit in this book and invalidate them by minimizing what this book has done for them. So I fought on that basis. My partner and I, Nobuntu, fought on that basis, and we fought for the books. But it's brought us into an interesting space because now we know and we understand the dynamics, and that authors barely make any money. My books made a lot of money, and I'm not afraid to say that, but it hasn't made me a lot of money. It's made other people rich. Of the turnover that this book has turned over in the last 2 years, I've probably only seen 10% of that.
Sure. Yeah.
And everything else, it goes to distribution and it goes to the retailer. So the retailer takes about 45% of what I make. So if we want to display on 300 rand, it retail it to 45%. That's almost half. And then the distributor takes 25%. And then I still have to print and then give it to the distributor. And then the distributor distributes it to the retailer. So then there's the printing aspect or the printing cost that I then forfeit from whatever's left. And this is why I'm talking about resetting, because what we absolutely have to understand as Black people is that the systems in place, whatever the systems may be, were not built for us. They were not built to benefit us as Black people. The systems around distribution, the value chain of literature, value chain of content, even on television, they're not built to serve us. They're built to serve whoever. So this is where we then have to challenge ourselves as to, okay, how do we come up with a system that supports us and that is about our agenda and about our mandates and what we want to see and want to achieve. And this is where we are. So I run Avad Media. We did our first production. We've been doing productions, private productions. Our most recent production was Mobile, but we're now really heavily into publishing.
Okay.
Into publishing distribution, especially because we have books. Our people read, but our people can't access books. So what happens is we have a little conference in Nyana, Yamakoskazi Gupi, and then you 10. I always used to wonder how certain authors, international authors, would tell you, I bought an island, and on my island, and now I'm getting, and it's taken me. I wrote this book, and it was a bestseller, and now I'm on some island that I bought. My life changed completely, and then it's taken me another 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 years to write another book, and then I just live off that. I'd always wondered, but you see, the system is not. It's built for them.
Yes. They already have a step in the door in within the capitalist system.
Yeah.
Bias will talk actually no
we can't. Why the principles I speak about in this book are universal principles. They're universal lessons. It's a universal language.
Corporate is corporate.
Corporate is corporate. Culture is culture. Women are women. Everywhere. Pain is pain. Everywhere. Right? So why can't my book be if Michelle Obama can sell her book here, why can't I sell my book in the US? Why can't I sell my book in the US? Why is that a thing that, because the book was shipped to the US because we had a lot of interest in the US, in Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, in Saudi Arabia, South Africans who lived abroad.
Yes.
Right? Were like they were just consuming the book. But my thing is we had to ship this book from here to why can a Michelle Obama take up space in my country, in my home, whereas my book is not in and Michelle Obama is a beautiful book, and I'm not Michelle Obama, but Michelle Obama is also not me.
Yeah.
So people mustn't come at me with, but you're not Michelle Obama, you're not Barack. Linagi, Ayanda Borotho, go and Google me. Where I come from, they know me. Gisha.
Yes.
I'm also me.
But what do you think about people who buy books in the, I don't want to call it black market, but ngifike ngishuthe onke ama-page ngisendela abantu abangani bami angilidayisi, but it's just that the people who really wanted your book, some of them couldn't afford it. Like you're saying, some people used to steal the book, but could it just be that even the accessibility of knowledge is still so, inama barriers amaningi.
Yeah, I probably never thought about it like that. I mean, I didn't think about it. For me, mine was hard to learn because I didn't have a downloadable copy. So I deliberately made that decision. We're not going to have a soft copy until after 2 years. So only now I might bring out a soft copy. But it is probably that. Initially, you're bringing a different perspective. It's something I hadn't thought about. But on thinking about now, as you say it, you're right. It is probably that inaccessibility because, I mean, I didn't buy Bear, but it was sent to me. I haven't read it, but it was sent to me, you know. So, and the reason I didn't read it was because I thought, I'm not going to partake in pirating and piracy, and this is criminal. This is a crime. This is somebody's intellectual property, and I don't want to partake in this. So that's why I didn't read it I have the book. I just haven't read it. So, but just to say you're bringing a fresh perspective to it. Yeah, maybe that inaccessibility is exactly that, which, you know, but I think if we were to create models that are more accessible for our people, and the model that we are looking at is a model that will allow our people to buy our books cheaper. Because right now
why
the
aren't
retailer
schools
has...
being a major distributor? It's an education
Why aren't
center.
universities... why, you know, you ask the questions that we're asking. Why aren't... I mean, I don't want to give away what we're trying to do, but
Yes.
there are ways and there are ways.
There
are
are a
ways
lot of
and
ways.
there are lot
Departments
of
should be
ways.
supporting. I can say it. The departments are supporting initiatives that don't have a reading impact. Where when we program, they do invest a lot in things that don't really spread reading culture. If you want people to read, you give them books that they want to read. Abona, the second you can finish this book, you know that you can read. You actually break out of the idea that black people don't like reading. You perpetuate it because you have not read, but maybe you've also never given someone a book that reflects their life, that reflects the people they know, but also that helps them find meaning and on how to navigate life. And how to navigate life. So with all that said, I think that there's a lot of politics within the space, and this is why we can never divorce ourselves from the actual conversations. Bualiwadu has real conversations, but when we're saying we're revolutionaries, we need to change the system and not just have a conversation and not just create awareness. We need to actively partake in systems that need to be transformed. Ayanda, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your thoughts because that is intellectual property, by the way. We need to give credit to the arts, people's thoughts, people's time as well. That's another thing that I think needs to change within the space of the arts. We really, for me to do public speaking is 50,000. What? But a photographer, ungamnikeza 50,000 for a camera. So let's really start re-envisioning how we value people's minds and how they are monetizing and economizing the gifts that they've been given. If you want the book, Baltolap.
It is at Exclusive Books. It's at Exclusive Bargains. I think they said CNA was liquidated. I'm not sure, but it's at your major bookstores all carry it. There's also independent bookstores and Take a Lot and independent distributors. Also, if you just check with me on my page, I usually respond to DMs. So if you check with me, I'll get somebody to get in touch with you if we have a distributor in that area. Yeah.
So get the book. Again, if you have the book already or you're going to go and purchase it, please do. If you have readings that you want to submit of any of the chapters, if there's a chapter that you can relate with, send us a submission, comment on all of these conversations. And trust me, I'm sure you guys can relate. But one thing that I do want young men to understand is that this book will open their eyes. This is not just a book for a woman and by a woman, but young men will be conscientized about the realities and the lived experiences of women and just the narrative of how a woman has navigated life. We appreciate you sharing a big part of you.
Yeah, no, I don't have any secrets left. This is all of them. So
huge part.
So anybody that comes for me, I'm like, it's in the book.
It's in the book. Thank you so much,
You're
Ayanda.
welcome. Thank you.
And also, please do follow her on her social media handles. You have a lot of interesting conversations, important conversations that I think touch on these chapters. So the conversation hasn't ended. Wuwa will still be here with you. These conversations don't end. This is a reference of what you are going through. But if there's a book that you want to recommend to us, please do contact us. If you're an author, please contact us on the details on the screen. And that's it from me, your host, Kuhle Konke Watuntuli. Follow us on our pages on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I'm Kuhle Konke Watuntuli. Thank you for tuning in.